Majority of the time, it's very seldom. Some of the Irish families would have Irish from school, but as I said, I'm a product of English medium school where I learned Irish as a subject. Some survive, some don't. I'm one of the survivors. So like they'd have a receptive. They'd understand Irish perhaps, but they wouldn't have the level of comfort to speak Irish. They do, but it has to be orchestrated. Say for birthday parties, the language that they use in school transfers to situations outside of the school. So when they meet as groups, they know their friends through Irish. And it depends on the school context again. If the schools are innovative enough to create structures in the playground and plans for use of language in the playground, that transfers and transcends outside of the school. So again, there are different, depending on the vision of the school leader and the motivation of the staff and the management, there are different practices in different Irish medium immersion schools. But we do have organisations very similar to Culture Vannin who promote the language use and I suppose orchestrate initiatives outside of the school to encourage and to instill a desire in children who have the language to use that language. And that subtractive thing, they have to have a connection with the language, they have to identify with the language to want to use that language. So creating competence is one thing, the school can go so far, creating opportunity is another thing. But creating that desire is that kind of abstract thing that's really more challenging. You know, oddly enough, it's slow, but it would surprise you that you hear Irish more often now than when I was young, outside of the Gaeltacht. And it's all the Irish medium students who went to Irish medium themselves, who now have children in Irish medium, and they have, it's normal and natural. You know, before when I was younger, it was almost bizarre to use Irish for communicative purposes. It was a school language. It was associated with textbooks. It was rote learned and traditionally taught. But now it's a language which is alive, which is used for communication in real life situations, tweeting, technology. It's brought a new life and a new breadth to the Irish language. And again, as I said, our context of being socio or multicultural, multilingual in Ireland, that has really benefited the Irish language also and its use. Absolutely. Again, the policy on the government the policy on Gaeltacht education has outlined a series of initiatives to inform and support parents in Gaeltacht schools. But again, staff and management in Irish medium immersion have been proactive for years. They have been planning in conjunction with the parents, informing the parents, having open nights when the children register for the school, describing how they explore pedagogy, mapping out the trajectory for learners. Say, for example, a lot of Irish medium schools would, you know, in kindergarten, everything is done through play, through story, through song, through rhyme, repetition, 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 and children don't really realise that they learn the language. But children in the older classes would record those songs and those rhymes for the parents at home to take home. So those kind of initiatives, you know, and even with readers, children in the higher classes would read stories and record them and use those as resources for schools are exceptionally inventive. And again, with technology, I think there's no excuse not to reach out to parents in a different way now and to be more accessible. Well, we want the lot. Is that not obvious? But I suppose I'm an educator, I'm an educationalist, so what I want is quality education in Irish medium education. Now, you've seen by the pie chart, we are a small slice of that pie, but we can do a lot to change the attitude and to change the learning and teaching in that context. Oh, the strategy for the 20-year strategy, which was devised, 5 years ago now, they have an astounding figure they have an actual target in numbers, but that's really unhelpful because, you know, who's to say, it was, I think, 243,000 extra per year. But again, figures are meaningless. Yeah. But I don't believe, I think figures are meaningless really. You know, it has to start with best practices and in invigorating parents to take an active role in the education process and build that community. Having numbers and tagging numbers on plans, I don't really think it works that well. There's much more positive attitude towards Irish. And it's because of the immersion model, because children see Irish now as a language of communication. They see it as a fun language, they talk to their peers in Irish. So Irish has baggage, just in case, just that you know. Again, it's to do with our education system, our tradition, our Christian brother history. And so Irish was taught very traditionally, and the older learners of Irish and speakers of Irish would have very negative, a lot of them would have very negative experiences of learning Irish. So there has been a rejuvenation of speaking Irish through the Irish medium sector. There has been a lot of funding invested in this policy for Gaeltacht education to provide the supports that are needed to move the sector on and to create the communities in the Gaeltacht when it comes to language planning, so that Irish will be used as a language of communication, of learning, and of socialisation in these areas. But yes, there is funding available now. It has been a very, very long journey, but research findings have really provided the evidence that supports the needs that have been articulated by these people working in these contexts for so many years. So I think the need for research, which is targeted on the real needs and demands of the sector, is essential to move the journey forward. Irish is our national language, and you know, we deserve, and it's part of who we are, it's part of our identity. And many people, there's a lot of thinking and a lot of different diverse thinking going on about the Irish language and what use is it anyway, and there's a minority of people who speak it and you can't speak it outside Ireland. We've heard all that, but at the end of the day, it's who we are. It's where we've come from. You know, and again, the funding hasn't been made available for that, but the action plan, the Department of Education action plan, is focused on English medium in particular, and looking at, again, taking the Irish medium model, especially the immersion model, and the positive messages that are coming out from the research there, but based on those positive messages, looking at how to reinvigorate the teaching of Irish and English medium. So the suggestions and the recommendations for CLIL, content and language integrated learning, teaching a discipline or subject area through Irish, solely through Irish or partly through Irish, they're really looking at pushing that forward in a real structured way. And even last week, I'm doing some research with post-primary teachers on content and language integration, and we met with the department and looked, I suppose, in an advisory capacity to see how we could progress some of the plans that are on paper. A plan is no good on paper, it needs to be lifted off and implemented. So, and that takes understanding and knowledge and time and skill. So, and attitude, positive attitude to move it forward. So I think there's a lot of work there. I think you've nailed it, because parents in English medium schools, they need to be aware of the benefits of what content and language integration initiative can bring for their child. What's in it for me? We all suffer from that disease. So parents need to be informed and involved before any such initiative is taken on, because obviously without that level of understanding, without the research to back it up, you know, parents will be concerned, because that's not their experience of school, of how they learnt Irish. You know, will it dilute their understanding of maths, for example? Will it impact negatively on their achievement in maths? And that's a serious concern. So to alleviate all the grey areas, really parents need to be informed. Well, I suppose maybe the last 20 years in particular, again, you've seen the Irish medium movement. We're relatively still young. Yeah. So, but with youth, we articulate our needs at different times. So I think to stand back and reflect on the needs and the challenges, and then that targets the research. So there are many, many interested people in the immersion field who really want to push the field forward in a positive place. We've loads of scope for development. Everything is not rosy, as you see there, from the inaccuracies in linguistic proficiency and all the rest. So there's lots of scope for development. But I think with that evidence base. It's much needed to drive policy and to drive departmental decisions in the right direction. So, like say in English medium school, you're normally teaching, and going back now, not since the Celtic Tiger landed, but in every classroom is a multicultural, multilingual classroom now. But in an English medium school, teachers normally teach mother tongue children of English, so they teach content. So it's that same demand, that linguistic demand and that pressure to make sure that the children access understandings, that they understand the content of what you're saying, that you provide that comprehensible input, so that by talking, they understand. But if I stand here and I'm talking about something very complex, and I don't use my hands, and I don't use my eyes, and I don't use my... You're a constant actor. So you use your hands, you use your eyes, you use your face, you use props, you use anything at all to convey meaning. So you can... and even last night we met a teacher, I won't mention her name, but you can spot them a mile off, a teacher from an immersion context. Because in a group of adults, they're much more animated. They talk with everything they have to get the meaning out there. And that's ingrained in them because that's what they do all day, every day. They're determined to get their meaning across. And they're very articulate. They use their voice very skillfully, their tone, their pausing, their intonation, but they use their hands, their eyes, they're smiling, and the pause is and their eye contact. So again, that comes with being bilingual. You know, when you're bilingual, you have a very keen, heightened sense of communication, and you're much more capable of a very effective communication. Ígrach cumar sáideach.
Never thought of that, but it's true.
Absolutely.
That's a brilliant,
yeah.
Brilliant sort of analogy to finish off that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cut.
You'd be mad enough to work in an immersion school.
Yeah, I hope I'm not after bringing that message. Do you want to leave on that note?
Yeah, no.
But it's a real enriching experience, and I really, truly mean that. So not to leave on a negative note. There are challenges, but there are unbelievable opportunities, and it's such a rewarding job to think that you are not just enabling children to access the best quality of education possible, but that you're also promoting the use of your culture and language in the education system and instilling that desire to use it outside as well. So it's quite rewarding and quite invigorating place to work. So that's the key message. Yeah.
I've got a few presents to either read on the way back when we get stuck.
Fantastic.
But hopefully on the plane and on the bus tomorrow.
You mean tonight in the floods?
Yeah, in the floods.
Great.
Well, we've got a bit of reading material to keep us going. But we've had a really brilliant time, and I've learnt loads, and it's really got us going. And definitely this is a start, hopefully, of sort of a close relationship between, say, maybe Culture Van and the Bunscoil and Limerick as well, and about trying to work on all those things, and just, pushing forward those amazing advantages of bilingualism and everything goes with it. Good am I.
Fear fáilte ró. Gur míle mágad.
Good am I san pitnach is Gaussiu Crail at a red rash. Eva is.
Eva.
Yeah.